Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week here at Just Gay Stuff Podcast. I am Jess.
And I'm Lauren.
And wow, we're just going to jump right into this week's episode because we have a very special guest waiting on the line.
We sure do, and I'm very excited.
Are you? Are you excited?
I am excited.
I feel like I cannot express enough gratitude every time we have a guest on this podcast.
I can't believe people want to come on our podcast.
I can't believe people still want to listen to us. So this week we have another interview that is in conjunction with Melt Festival that is happening here in Brisbane right now. It started on the 23rd. If you don't know that, you need to get your wits about you. We did tell you a couple of weeks ago that it was coming up.
We sure did.
So anyway, I don't know if you know. Well, you know because you're in this interview.
Yeah.
There's a movie premiering in Brisbane at Melt Festival called Heart of the Man. And it will be having an outdoor screening at the Powerhouse this coming Saturday, October 26th. It is the debut film for a First Nations filmmaker, David Cook. And today with us, we have Matt Young, who actually is starring in the film. And he's here to talk to us about the film itself and his own journey. So welcome, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Jess. Hey, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on.
Honestly, it's always a pleasure to have a friendly face join us for a chat.
I'm super excited.
Lovely.
Oh, yay!
So, Matt, would you like to give us a brief overview of the movie and the part that you play within the movie?
Sure. So the film is called Heart of the Man, as you mentioned, David Cook's debut feature. It's about a young boxing protege, Chris Windora, whose dad, Sammy, almost made it as a boxer. And Chris is a very talented boxer. And so Chris has to decide whether he's going to live out his father's dream or forge his own path in life and follow his heart in a different direction.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, exactly. I do not get into the boxing ring at all, which I was like, oh, come on.
Why not?
My character, Joey, he owns a theater, like a community theater that has LGBTQ sort of plays. So he's a gay man living in this town. And Chris and Joey literally collide, and that's how they're introduced. And eventually Joey takes him under his wing and sort of shows him another way to live other than the life of violence and trauma that he's been living.
Wow.
Yeah. You said in your initial introduction to us when we first met you on correspondence on email that the character of Joey and his life experience is quite close to you and your own journey. Do you want to tell us a bit of the story about that?
Yes. So I'm an acting coach. And
wow. That's
I
cool.
actually, we lived in Fiji for a while, and I was the chairperson of the Fiji Arts Club, which is sort of the community theater. So basically, all of this is just my life. So David came to one of my acting classes with no intention of putting me in the movie, as far as I know. I didn't even know there was a movie, and I invited him to come to one of my acting classes. And I think after an hour of him watching me sit back and hold space for everybody and, take care of all the young people that I was teaching, he went, wait a minute. I think that this guy might be the mentor that, the character of Chris needs in the movie. And so he said, hey, I'm going to send you a scene. Would you like to give it a go? And so, so I did. So most of my interactions, in fact, all of my interactions in the film are with the young people that I'm sort of looking after in the theater, particularly Chris. And I'm also a dad. I was a foster to adoption parent. And so Parker Little, who plays Chris Windora, is the same age as my son Graham. So also I've got lived experience of being a dad and, raising a young man and looking after a young man and sort of holding him and guiding him in the right direction.
Yeah, wow. So you were able to be fully immersed in that whole character and that whole role.
It was mad. When I got the initial audition side, I just couldn't believe how much I related to it and how real it was for me. And David said the same thing when I sent it back to him, and his partner Natasha was the co-producer, and they were like, wow, you found all these different levels in this scene and you knew exactly what everything meant and where it was going. And I was like, well, yes, I've lived this life. I know what this is. So it was amazing. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like maybe David came and saw you in Fiji and you were running this community theater and he was like, I need a character in my movie, and just wrote that part for you? I feel like that's exactly what happened.
It sounds a bit like
here.
that, yeah.
I don't think he wrote it for me. He did say that he was very aware of me because I still do teach online, and I teach sometimes at acting studios in Brisbane as well. because I lived in the Pacific, I really champion Pacific voices and I champion sort of non-Caucasian talent, I suppose.
Mm.
So David certainly was aware of me through Takuna Acting Club and was aware that I was really trying to find underrepresented voices to train. And so, yeah, so I think that that aspect of the character definitely, I don't know if he based it on me, but it was a definite parallel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
wow.
It's just like a match made in heaven.
Really? Seriously. Do you feel like playing a character that's similar to your backstory can be traumatic or therapeutic to you?
It was so delightful, and I just breathed out when I was in it. Incredibly therapeutic. I'm going to get emotional talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a tall person. I have mass. I'm always asked, I was just talking to my friend about this. I'm always asked to play these gay characters, but they want me to be sort of the stereotype of what a gay man is. And it often includes lisping and mincing and all these sorts of things. I guess we could call it pink face,
Yeah.
asking us to play these really strong stereotypes. And I've never really felt that. I mean, I'm just like, I am who I am, and my sexuality is a huge part of who I am.
Yeah.
But I don't fit into that stereotype. And so to be able to just be me and to be a gay man who was like me and not to have to manipulate who I am for this character, to just exist as this character was so liberating.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to do that in my career before. I've always had to pretend to be somebody else. So, yeah, an amazing experience. Like I said, I get quite emotional about it.
That's so great too, because I feel like, and we've talked about stereotypes through television and mainstream media and things, there are so many parts of every community, not just the queer community, that you don't see on television. And I said to Lauren, I really want to write a sitcom that is based around a gay man who is a truck driver. Not camp, not fluffy, nothing of that stereotype at all, and just normalize the fact that any person down the street can have this sexuality about them and it doesn't have to fit into this box.
I think the problem is people think that sexuality defines you, and that's not the truth.
Exactly.
Well, I live in Blackall, Queensland. I live in regional Queensland. That's, Bob Catter territory. And Bob Catter famously said, there are no gay people in my electorate. And it's like, dude, they're actually...
You're like...
They just are the farmers and the truck drivers and, all the other things. Or the theater teachers. I mean, I guess that's a little bit stereotypical.
I just often think of all of those people that struggle to find that representation. And I'm like, okay, let's start giving it. Let's start showing everybody who watches mainstream media that anybody can be anything.
And I think that's why we're so grateful that we started this and do what we do to be able to give voices to those people.
Let's level up. And I want to write all these like queer stories or put all these queer stories forward that have characters that aren't connected to a stereotype.
And the authenticity in this film, it was a real big thing for David, was that he authentically cast people in the roles that they were. So there's a lot of queer actors in this film, and they're not pretending to be anything other than who they are. Well, maybe there's slight differences. Like one of them says he's bi, and I don't know if he identifies as bi in real life. But he's just being himself. Like this is what people think acting is like us pretending to be other people, but in a film like Heart of the Man, it's so intensely personal that it's actually just stripping off the mask and just showing people who you really are.
Yeah, wow.
Through the character, of course.
Well, that leads me to my next question. I was literally going to ask, do you think that it's easier to play a character that you identify with, or is it harder because you have this sense of vulnerability that you suddenly are showing everybody?
I think it's easier. Well, it's healthier. It's more heartfelt. I played a character in a play who was quite morally reprehensible. And it was a really easy character for me to get into because it was so far away from me that I could step into it and then leave it behind. Whereas when you do something like this, where you're really opening your soul and just letting the audience look into the eyes of the character, it's a vulnerable place. But David held such a beautiful, safe place for us on set. There was never yelling. There was never any rushing. There was he's a very soft-spoken person. And we just found these beautiful characters that were so much a part of who we are as people, and then through the words that David wrote. So I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's easier, but I think it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable AF.
Yeah.
Do you find it harder to differentiate? Because yes, you're showing such vulnerable parts of you as you're putting yourself in the character. Like, as you said, it's quite an emotional film and very raw and authentic.
Well, this character's name is Joey, and he's based on, all the characters are based on someone that David knows or an aspect of David himself. So he named Joey, and then there is a surname to the character who is somebody who he knew from growing up. And he said to me, do you want to change the name? Like now, just in the credits, it just says Joey, but it used to say Joey Rousseau. And then we were potentially going to use Joey Quink because I'm half Polish, and that's my mother's maiden name.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that.
That connects it quite personally if you were to do that.
Yeah, because he also wanted to honor my ancestors. I mean, as much as he wants to honor his own ancestors, I suppose.
That's awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so Joey is completely different to me, but he's completely a part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, the movie is centered around the sport of boxing. Do you think it's important that we start seeing stories where sportsmen especially are visible with their sexuality?
Yes, absolutely. Because in every sport, you're going to find men of all different sexualities or women of all different sexualities and gender identities. So absolutely. Why boxing works so well for this is because it is such a stereotypical masculine machismo sort of buff head, punch, punch, punch.
Yeah.
Whereas this boy is so tormented by not really understanding what's happening inside him. He doesn't really fully understand who he is, but he knows he doesn't fit that stereotype of what the boxing world has presented for him, even though he's an incredibly talented boxer. Yeah. I think sport's a great leveler. I think it's a great way to tell stories. And I'm a huge boxing movie fan. Like, I love Rocky, and you'll see bits of Rocky in this film, I reckon. And I love, like, Mary Kom, which is this great Bollywood film about a female boxer that Priyanka Chopra was in. So I'm a huge sports movie fan.
How did you rate Cinderella Man?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean,
I've never seen it. I just thought I'd ask you.
Yeah. And the one with
$1 Million Baby.
$1 Million Baby, fantastic.
That's a great movie.
Hilary Swank, though.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Yeah. So you're going to see like a lot of the tropes of the boxing movie in Heart of the Man, but then, it goes in different directions as well. But there's a montage, with like,
the typical.
Yeah,
Rocky
like it sort of sounds
montage.
80s-ish, and it's the montage, working out and doing the push-ups and all that sort of stuff, Parker.
I love that.
Being gorgeous while he does it, of course, because it's very gorgeous to be a boxer.
Well, you have to skip the next question because I think you already answered it. How did you get to be in Heart of the Man?
I joke about it all the time because I always joke that I was stalking David on Instagram.
Or was he stalking you?
Well, maybe, because I liked his look and I was really interested in the work that he had been doing. And so I kept approaching him and saying, hey, do you want to come to my acting class? Do you want to come to my acting class? And he did say recently that he was actually stalking me as well. So,
see?
So there was a little bit of mutual admiration,
Mutual
a little bit
stalking.
of romance that started virtually
Pull
before
back
we got
the
to know each
curtain.
other.
That's awesome. So how did you feel watching the film back for the first time?
It's a very intense experience for me. The first scene that my character's in is a very violent scene. And it's always difficult to watch yourself involved in violence on screen. But then his sort of gentleness comes out in the next few scenes, and his compassion. I was very much moved by it. I knew what the script was. I had read the whole script, but things changed as well. That things always change while you're making a movie. And so I knew where it was going to begin and where it was going to end. And I knew what my contribution had been. And then the rest of it was just the roller coaster. And yeah, it's a very emotional journey. I mean, people say bring your tissues. So yeah, so even though it looks like it's going to be the tough guy exterior, there is a sensitive soul underneath it.
Aww.
Is it the same emotion to film a violent scene versus watching it back? Because obviously you know what that's going to be from an external point of view then.
We had an incredible group of actors who were our supporting actors, our background actors for that scene, who we had done all the fight choreography, and as well as there's love scenes in a movie, which there are in Heart of the Man. There's a choreography to that as well. So we had done all the fight choreography, And then we put it into the situation. And then the background actors, who are all like individually picked by David from actors that he knew of or who he thought the faces were going to be a good part of the storytelling. And they came, and usually when you're in a background actor, you're asked not to make any noise and, you sort of have to just fade into the background. But all of the actors that are in that scene are principals in that scene.
Wow.
And so their vocalization and their breath and everything in that scene is absolutely stunning. And yeah, so that allowed me as an actor to just go to an entirely different level. And yeah, and so it's a very visceral scene.
Yeah, just like really enhances the emotions that you had to put out there.
Well, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Would you be happy to tell us a little bit about your own coming out journey?
Sure. I actually just did a show earlier in the year in Sydney called Up Your Bum No Babies.
Oh my
yeah.
Stories
gosh.
from the Gay Ghetto.
That is an amazing title.
For Qtopia, for the LGBTQI plus History Museum in Sydney, and it was for Pride Week.
I love that.
Storytelling play. And I told the story about my coming out. And I came out several times.
As we do.
As we do, yeah.
We never stop coming out, really.
Yeah. So at first I thought I was bi, and I still think I'm bi, but I don't identify that way anymore. So I sort of came out as bi, but it was my first same-sex relationship when I came out to my parents, and then that didn't work out. And eventually a few years later, I felt like really embarrassed. This is so, I guess it's still a bit traumatic for everybody to come out. I felt really embarrassed to come out. And then I felt sort of like, even though my parents were like, yeah, it's cool, I felt like I still had to keep explaining myself all the time. And I was afraid when I called them I was living in New York, there in Massachusetts. I was afraid when I called them that I couldn't talk about who I was dating, because it wasn't a relationship. It was just somebody, who I was seeing.
Yeah.
And so eventually sort of settled more and got to know myself more. And then I said, okay, I'm gay. And they were like, well, what's changed? And I said, well, nothing's changed. It's just that it's important for me. It was also during the AIDS crisis, like what I'm talking about when I was coming out. So it was important for me to stand up and be counted as a gay man because it was more visible, because bisexuality, as many of us know, it can be very invisible in a sort of social way. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have more impact politically as a gay man. So yeah, so like I said, but I mean, I'm also in a 25-year relationship with a man. So you never really stop being bi, but I'm very happy to identify as gay.
Oh, that's excellent.
Cute. That's true, right?
Yeah, well, as we speak to guests and people on a day-to-day, it's like your journey of discovering who you are and what you like and what you don't is a day-to-day thing as well, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
And, you can still be bisexual and have a preference. So
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, what brought you to Australia if you grew up in the States?
Well, the man who is now my husband.
Ah, cute.
So I came here for love. I started my career touring in musicals in the United States and Europe in shows like The Chorus Line and On the Town. And I had done a chorus line and I was out of a job. I had just finished a production of Funny Thing Happened on the way to the Forum. And I ran into a woman named Amy Yule, and she said, do you want a job on a cruise ship? And I said, yes, because I need a job and I'm about to get evicted from my apartment. And blah, 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 blah. And then the ship landed in Sydney the week before Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras in 2000. And at 2:00 in the morning at the Stonewall Inn on Oxford Street, into a young man named Peter. And now 25 years and 2 kids later, we're still together.
That is so
That is
amazing.
the cutest story.
I love that. I love that it was like so typical. It's like you went to Sydney, which is like the major gay city in Australia, and then you went to Stonewall on Oxford Street, which is like the pinnacle of the place to go.
But then I got back on the
found
ship.
your life partner.
I didn't hop off the ship. I got back on the ship and then we emailed back and forth. This was like the year that Hotmail started. I mean, this is like we were a pre-internet sort of, relationship. So we communicated through Hotmail instead of writing letters. And then eventually my heart just ached for him. So at the time, legally, he couldn't move to the United States as my same-sex partner. But in Australia, through the interdependency visa, I could move here and get my permanent residency. So we had the choice of either breaking up or me moving here. And my heart said, this is the way to go.
You chose love, and I love that.
Also, very progressive of Australia to allow that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then it took us so bloody long for same-sex marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like back in 2001, 2002. And so we thought, oh, well, surely, because Canada legalized it, New Zealand legalized it. We were like, well, surely it's going to happen in Australia. And then it took a long time.
A long time.
We're like that false progressiveness over here. We're like,
It was
just
strange because
kidding.
we were adopted parents, but we weren't able to be legally wed.
Yeah.
So we legally were bound to our kids, but we weren't legally bound to each other, which I think was very dangerous, quite honestly.
That is quite dangerous.
So I'm really pleased that legally everything evened out.
Yeah, because in your circumstance, like that's great for you. You are life partners and you're still together. But for couples that maybe didn't stay together and had their kids bound to them but not each other,
It gets messy.
That gets very messy and could be very heartbreaking for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then what took you to regional? Still Peter?
Peter was born in Blackall, Queensland, where we now live. So when my father-in-law died in 2021, we sort of looked at our lives, and we had been living overseas in Fiji before that, and then we're back in Brisbane, and then we sort of went, oh, it would be nice to own a house, wouldn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't it?
So we went out for a recce. We went out to check it out and had a great weekend out there, and Peter reconnected with all these people from his childhood, and we're actually on his mother's side of the family, his great-great-grandfathers or whatever basically founded the town, so we're related to a bunch of people there. And it just felt like the right place to be. And I really do love living regionally. I think it's really incredible. And we're not the only gays in the village. So there you go.
That's
Love
even
that.
better.
That's
no matter
amazing.
what Bob Catter says.
I know, right? And I'm like, well, there's us and there's that couple. And then there's the lesbian couple out there. And then there's, this bi woman and this trans woman. And we're all here in this population of 1,400 people. And here we are.
We're everywhere. Everyone
We're
just
everywhere.
needs to get with the
I was
program.
going to say,
that's the problem.
Ignorant people choose not to see.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You spoke about being an actor for Chorus Line and Cruise Ship and everything. When did you decide that you wanted to become an actor?
I am the youngest of four, and so I always did everything that my siblings did. I played hockey because my brothers played hockey. I played a musical instrument because my sister played a musical instrument. I swam because she was a swimmer. And so I did my first play because all of my siblings had done like the year at the end of primary school, which is year 6 in America. They had all done the school musical. Sort of like, if you were successful academically, you could be in the musical. And so I did it, and I guess I was pretty good at it. And then I auditioned for another play at the community theater. Then they did a second musical at school that year because the group of us that had played the leads just were really enthusiastic. And that was kind of it. Like 11 years old, I was bit, and I really didn't look back.
You caught the bug.
I was really fortunate to grow up in a town that had a great community theater that did a lot of plays and musicals. So I was always busy. And if I wasn't on stage, I was ushering or building the sets or painting or helping out with the costumes and all that sort of business. So again, we talk about Joey, this guy that owns this theater, the Rainbow Theater, and sort of does everything to make it happen. And I sort of did that in my real life growing up as well.
You just know the ins and outs. That's amazing.
The world drew you in.
See, that character was made for you.
Have you done theater and community theater?
Yeah, so much theater. Not a lot lately.
Lauren's a big musical
I'm a
nerd.
big old musical theater nerd and lover and everything.
It's so much fun, right?
It is fun. I can't think about the last one I did.
That feeling of family that you get when you're in that.
Yeah.
It's great as well. Like back in the day, it wasn't popular to like musicals. It seems like it's a little bit more popular to like musicals now, but it comes and goes.
Yeah.
In your journey in becoming an actor, did you face any adversity or homophobia being gay?
Yes, constantly. I have a wedding ring now because I'm married to my husband, but I used to wear a wedding ring to my auditions in New York from like age 18 to about age 27. Because married men got the jobs because they had a wife and kids to look after, whereas gay men were just flippity gibbets that were just, running around, going to nightclubs and being silly. So, so that stereotype has existed in my business for a very long time. And so I started wearing a wedding ring to sort of hide who I was in the hopes of getting a job. And then when I moved to Sydney in 2000, I did a show. So I do a lot of these sort of memoir style shows. And I did a show about meeting Peter called Lucky to Be Me. And an agent at the time was telling his clients, you can't talk about being gay or else you're never going to work in the Australian film and television and theater industry. And this was in 2000. And so
Wow.
the Sydney Star Observer actually called me a cabaret groundbreaker because they're like, he's actually talking about being gay. And this is something that we never talk about in Australia. And even well into the 2000s and into the 2010s, there was still, and you still read about it all the time, the actors coming out and saying, it took me this long, it took me this long. The industry is based on these classic stereotypes of masculinity. It's very binary, the theater industry. It's based on these classic ideas. If you look back at the old Hollywood movies, the damsel in distress and the hero and the villain, and they're all gendered. And it's taken a long time to sort of start to break that apart. And we're still breaking it apart big time.
Yeah. That's super hard to deal with.
We talk about the fact that, it's only been in the last 10 years that we've been able to be as visible as this, like right now. And that's so recent. Yeah,
I teach actors and I often get asked. Luckily, authentic casting is a thing, where people they want to hire LGBTQIA plus actors for those roles. But even though I know, like I come in contact with actors who I know are, if they haven't told me they are, I'm always reluctant to contact them and ask them if they want to go for this role. Because again, some people they're queer in their private life and then they're just neutral in their professional life.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised. I did a play a few years ago and I was surprised the trauma that young people are still carrying around about that. Like I sort of had hoped that we had come a bit further since I was a young person, but it still seems to be a struggle.
Yeah, it is quite a struggle still. I know that I face that in my workplace a little bit at the moment.
We've talked about as well, there's echo chambers going on where we can surround ourselves with queer content and safe people, and the things that we look at online is all barracking for us and in our corner. But the minute you step outside of that, you realize that not everybody is barracking for you and not everybody wants you to have the rights that you deserve. And that's really confronting. And so even for young people today, there's like one half of society that have grown up progressive and there's still the other half that are growing up being taught hate.
Yeah.
And day to day, you still don't know who those safe people are unless they are openly showing that to you. And so I can understand still the willingness to hide so much of yourself.
Yeah. And in Heart of the Man, Chris Svendora, the character of Chris that played by Parker Little, he doesn't have the words to describe what he's feeling. Like he's feeling all these feelings and he's trying to tell his grandmother, how he's feeling. And he's trying to process it and he's looking at who's around him and he doesn't have the role models and he until he meets my character, of course.
Yeah. You're the savior.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the words, the language for it. I mean, language is so important. And so this is why like authentic casting I think is really important. And I think it's important for us to really acknowledge how people self-identify and to validate it because language is so important.
Yeah, you spoke just now how authentic casting is so important. So to you as a gay man, was it important to you as an actor to play a queer character?
Yes. And in fact, that's all I want to play. Like going back to the mid 2000s when this agent was saying, well, if people find out you're gay, you only play gay characters. And I remember talking to my friend Trevor Ashley and I was like, I don't care. I'd be happy playing gay characters for the rest of my life. I'm like, because I've come to this point. I was only 27, so I'm old and wise. But, I'm 52 now. I'm 52. I've played so many characters that did not represent who I am. There's hundreds of characters that are going to be an aspect of who I am as a gay person or as a queer person that I haven't played yet, that haven't been written. So Jess
is going to write a few.
If I don't play a straight character again for the rest of my life, I really don't care. I'm quite happy to keep telling queer stories, and that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And they need to be told at the end of the day. We need to normalize the fact that we're all just people who are trying to live our authentic lives, and it really affects nobody else.
That's right. I'm really excited about Heart of the Man, that it has been sort of embraced by the queer community as well. And like I said, that there are a lot of authentically queer actors who are in it. And the movie is about community. And so it's about the Indigenous community of the family that is at the center of the story. And it's about the queer community because of my involvement in sort of the journey of some of the characters throughout the movie, and it's also of the regional community. It's even though it's a slightly urban story, it's not set in Sydney. It's not set in a place where people like Joey can live an out gay life, and not fear that there's going to be repercussions at times. So yeah, it's really amazing.
What would you like people to take away from Heart of the Man?
I want people to take away from Heart of the Man. Well, first of all, I mean, the core message of the story is that love and compassion are always going to beat out hate and trauma and violence, I think. So that's definitely what I want people to take out of it. But also that it's a family story, and that we all have families, and families are complicated. And hopefully there's enough love in a family, whether it's a traditional family or a non-traditional family, to sustain all of us into the future. So that's something else I want them to take out of it. That's a great Australian-made, mostly Queensland-made film. Like before post-production, everybody involved in it was from Queensland, which was quite interesting as well. And that you can make an incredible, if you have passion, which David Cook does as a storyteller, you can make a film with a very low budget and just call in every favor and bring all of your friends into it and write a great script and write a script that has authentic people in it. And then we are going to flock to it and we're going to tell a beautiful story. So, yeah.
What was the reaction from most people that have seen it? Have you been given feedback?
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been very lucky to get to travel to a few different film festivals with the film and to do question and answers. And it's been different everywhere that we've done it. In regional Queensland, in the Vision Splendid Outback Film Festival in Winton, it was a lot of caravanners and a lot of older women, and they were moved to tears, and everybody wanted to come up and hug me and talk to me after the film. When we played in Sydney, people were really interested in the fact that it was an Indigenous story and an urban Aboriginal story, and that the Aboriginality of the film exists, but that we don't really talk about it. They wanted to talk more about the Aboriginality of the film. And then on Gold Coast Film Festival, it was just heaps of friends and family. So everybody was like, this is amazing. Yeah. So it was a huge celebration. So we've had really mixed reactions and really interesting reactions, and everybody wants to talk about it afterwards, which is why we do the Q&As.
Yeah, which is awesome, because I think that feedback is also giving you how you're reaching people and how you're moving people. And that's what you want from anything you create. You want to see how you've changed somebody in that hour or hour and a half or 2 hour, whatever. It's so important to get that feedback.
That's so interesting, because I am like a creature of the theater as well as doing films, and I love to sit in the cinema for this film and to listen to how people react to it, because it's just, I'm very proud of it. And I find that visceral experience of being an audience member to be so exciting, because usually I'm on stage and you can't, you sort of have to block everything out. I mean, aside from applause and laughter. Yeah, so that's so funny that I keep doing these live events, because I am, I started in the theater, so I guess the theater runs through my veins.
Yeah, always, always. I'm looking forward to seeing it for
Me
sure.
too.
I have a bit of a fun question before we get into like our last little...
Ooh.
What is your favorite character that you have ever played?
I played Max Bialystock in The Producers at the Brisbane Powerhouse in 2021. I can't remember.
Lauren just had a visceral reaction to that.
I did. That's so cool.
And I was in the original Australian cast of the Producers when it was the professional production and Mel Brooks came out and things. And so that show, I think, is so funny. It's so naughty. And Max is a very naughty character and a very complicated character. And so that's probably the favorite thing I've ever played. And I'm young, so hopefully I'll get to play it many, many more times in my career.
Yes, excellent.
And he's a showman. There's a through line, right? Joey, theater owner.
Yeah.
A little bit of performer. Max Bialystock, performer. Yeah.
And the next thing is, what's next for you after Heart of the Man?
Well...
Spoilers.
I
Exclusives.
have a small non-speaking role in a film called Zombie Plane, which has Vanilla Ice and Sophie Monk and Chuck Norris as some of the stars of it.
Oh my
God.
And it's a horror comedy, and it's about zombies, a zombie outbreak on a plane. So that's going to come out next year.
Oh, wow.
It's like snakes on a plane, but they leveled up.
with zombies.
Yeah, what people maybe don't realize, especially about film actors, is is that Heart of the Man we shot it in 2021, 2022. So it's 2024 now. So films take a while. So I actually have like this whole slate of things that are coming up. I'm in another indie feature called Streets of Deceit, where I play a corrupt cop. I have a short film that I'm in called And I Realize That I play a 50-year-old tradie who's always wanted to be a dancer and has never really been allowed to. And, comes out as his authentic self. Yeah, so these are all things that are still either in post-production or they haven't been released yet. So that's some of the things that I have come. Oh, and I'm doing a film next year for Jesse Sutherland, who's another queer filmmaker, where I play another character that is violent.
Has there ever been a character that you've had to play that you really disliked?
No, I love every character I play, even the really horrible ones, because you have to believe 100% as the actor that you're right and that you're true. So even when I played Jeffrey Skilling, who was found guilty of 14 counts of fraud, he never thought he broke the law. You know what I mean? He thought what he was doing was right. So I haven't had to play characters. Well, this violent character I'm talking about in this next film, Jesse and I had many conversations, and I was like, well, it's scary to step into that role because he's someone who perpetuates violence on someone else. And Jesse was like, well, you don't have to do it. And I understand that. And it's going to be a hard role to cast. And I said, no, I'm scared of it and I'm challenged by it. So that's why I'm going to take it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to face the fear in that aspect. And do you ever look at it like maybe you can get inside the head of that person and why they are the way they are?
Absolutely. Especially with queer characters. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of trauma and there's intergenerational trauma in our community as well. Because again, some of us felt like we didn't have any role models to look up to, or we didn't find out until we came out that actually your uncle is actually gay as well. That's why he never got married. You know what I mean? So like, and also the stigma that's been attached to it for a long time. So yeah, it's important to keep playing those roles and just learning and experiencing why those characters are the way that they are.
And I think there is a level of understanding when you're talking about people generationally have had to face so much adversity, have had to face so much hate, and then that hatred builds within themselves. Yeah. And even the internal homophobia. In another episode, Lauren and I spoke about, I feel like I experienced that in high school. I was so scared to be who I was because I didn't want to be hated, that I just hated myself and I hated anyone who was telling me, oh, you're gay or you're this or you're that. And you're just like, no, like you push it away and you push it down because you don't want to be different and you don't want to be picked on and you don't want to be this. And so you become that person that you don't like and that you don't want to be, just to try and push it all away. And then, you know, those things can come out differently from people, and violence, I suppose, is one of them. It's just a way to cope.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that does happen sometimes.
Well, let's end on a higher note.
Okay, yeah. So let's say something really positive and exciting.
If you could be in a movie alongside anybody of your choice, alive or passed away, who would it be?
Ooh.
Well, I've just done it with David Cook and Parker Little and Roxanne McDonald.
Heart of the Man, everybody.
And all these wonderful actors. I suppose I would love to have been in a movie with Judy Garland.
Oh.
I'm such a Wizard of Oz fan. And I was watching The Wizard of Oz on TV, and my 23-year-old son came into the room and was like, what is this? It was when the witch was sending the monkeys out, and he was like, oh, the visual effects are really good in this. What is this? I was like, Michael, this was made in like the 1930s. He was like, wow, it looks like Harry Potter or any things I'm watching. I'm like, well, there you go. Yeah, so definitely, Judy Garland would be pretty cool to be in a movie with, I reckon. And we would sing and dance together.
I love that.
That's a great way to like end this interview.
Perfect. Perfect way.
Awesome. Well, we hope that this interview with Matt has sincerely convinced you to go and see Heart of the Man as part of Melt Festival this coming Saturday, October 26th. It is at the Powerhouse on the outdoor screen, and you can get your tickets through Dendy Cinemas. We will put all the links in the show notes. So thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been fabulous to have you on Just Gay Stuff podcast, and thank you for sharing your journey with us as well.
And I think that's it for us. So until next time, you better remember to
stay gay, motherfuckers.
Thank you so much. Love that.
Thank you so much, Matt.
That's awesome. You two are amazing. Thank you.
We're talking about Just Gay Stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.